Hello friends, ADC here on another rainy evening in the lowlands of eastern Scotland. Today is the 11th of October 2018. Now the IPCC Special Report number 15 has been released last week, and it reminded me of a TED Talk I had seen a while back from Bill Gates. I hadn't seen it in 2010 when it was first published, but then I rewatched it a couple of days ago when the report came out, just to refresh myself, and another post I had made approximately a year ago regarding the COP21 Paris Agreement, more specifically Trump's pullout of the Paris Agreement, and my opinions on that. So after having skim-read I tried to read, but I skim-read the summary for policymakers of the report number 15. It's absolutely boring. Please do not do it. But more seriously, my question still remains that of about a year ago. What exactly do we practically do? What is how are they planning to achieve this 1.5 degree goal, and how does everything fit into that? Now, of course, I haven't read the full report. I do hope there's more information in that one, and I have read some titles, some headlines of some articles around the web stating, reduction in meat consumption and sustainable living, sustainable mobility, bicycles, etc. are ways of doing this. But I feel that in the West that really isn't enough, especially when we think of emerging economies such as India and China, which are going to be a major contributor to sort of CO2 emissions, especially through their industrialization. But let's start with the first topic at hand, which is this equation that Bill Gates cites in his TED Talk. I believe that it is called the Kaya equation, after a Japanese scientist, but they still do not know if it originated from him or not. And so this equation is kind of worrying to me because, well, let's go through it first. So the amount of CO2 that's emitted in terms of mass is the population multiplied by the services each person gets, multiplied by the energy per service of energy of that service, and the carbon intensity of said service. And we can measure that, well, first of all, in humans, in GDP per capita, so how rich a person is, the amount of energy that is used in a particular service, which has a particular price, and the amount of CO2 in terms of kilograms that is emitted per kilowatt hour per energy. Now, what worries me about this equation is that, and even Bill Gates himself says in the very beginning of his talk, one of these has to get very close to zero in order to reach zero. Now, just to correct Bill Gates, I'm sure he misspoke. No, one of them has to reach zero. That's how multiplication works. But apart from that, it's quite worrying, because what we see here is population. So we have to depopulate the Earth, and who's gonna back that? I'm not gonna back that sort of policy. Services. So services is directly related to lifestyle, and even Bill Gates himself says that it's going to more than double in the next 20 or 30 years, I believe. The sort of the global lifestyle, which means that in order to better reach this CO2 goal, we will have to make as many people as possible poor. And that's not great. And in fact, I'll talk about a few things that were in the policy report that corroborate what I'm saying. The other one is sort of energy and efficiency. So I mean, that's good. That's the pressure there is to innovate, and that's good. At least that one there. And although it is based on the amount of energy someone is able to achieve per unit of currency, which means that making energy very expensive will also reach this goal, and that's not good, especially because it is linked to the lifestyle and lifting people out of poverty scenario. And the last one is the carbon intensity on any particular amount of energy that is generated, and there is a good pressure there to innovate for sort of better carbon-free technologies. Although I do not see nuclear power mentioned enough in these kinds of discussions. Mostly people who tend to be in this pro-environmentalism, against fossil fuels, tend also to be against nuclear power. Which is a topic that I would like to discuss perhaps in more detail another time. But in terms of reaching CO2 goals, it's definitely a positive. What else did I want to say? So I read the another thing that Bill Gates did say was that through vaccines he can reduce the population by 15%. Now, I'm going to give the charitable interpretation to this statement, which isn't the one with the vaccine scandals in Kenya regarding the forcible sterilization of females via a HPV vaccine, I believe. I'll have to double check that. But the charitable interpretation is by improving healthcare, reproductive healthcare, and lowering infant mortality rate, we can effectively reduce the amount of people that are born, because people will not tend to try to have more children if they know that more will survive. Is that true? Maybe. It certainly is in the West. At least we've seen that. With increased sanitation, we have reduced the amount of babies that are born. Is that a good thing or not? I did put a question mark inside this arrow going up. Another topic that I do want to discuss in more detail is the amount of people on the planet and how actually that benefits related to the amount of ideas that are generated and the amount of brains working towards certain goals. Certainly the Industrial Revolution happened after cities and sort of big congregations of people that were freed from the burden of working the land. After that happened, we started seeing this exponential innovation. And the megalopolies, say, San Francisco and the whole of Silicon Valley, those are big congregations of people which generate all this incredible innovation. But enough tangents, let's get to the IPCC report. And what I wanted to address is, I stuck with it long enough to reach page 28, which is towards the end. And it has this graph. I strongly recommend you to see it for yourself. You can find the special report. I'll link it in the description of the video. These are 4 of the I think 20-something Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has set, and the brown is the trade-offs and blue is synergy. And what we see in these 4 goals, namely poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, and clean water and sanitation, they are in a trade-off with the reaching of the goals stated by the IPCC for the reduction of CO2. As I was saying, reduction of services, making people poorer, and depopulating is something that goes hand in hand with trying to reduce the CO2 emissions, which is why I think this equation is something that we shouldn't be looking at, because it's quite damaging in the sense that how are we framing the problem? We're framing the problem as number of humans, number of how good people are living, etc. And isn't the whole point trying to reduce suffering on the planet, at least to my understanding? So that's that. I'll link all the stuff in the description. I did also put up some solutions, but I think they were kind of stated as I went along. So vegetarianism, veganism, and 2 of the ones that were mentioned directly by Bill Gates. Well, first of all, he brings out some fireflies at the end of this talk, saying, this is a way of doing things in a more sustainable way. I'd like to see him having fireflies in his house. But in any case, the other thing that he did mention, which is kind of scary, is geoengineering. Spraying the skies or whatever to try and reduce the albedo of the Earth. Solar radiation management, call it what you want. Perhaps that's a topic that we can expand on another time. Leave in the comments whichever topic I've mentioned today that you want to see preferentially, But other than that, I will continue my regular Thursday schedule. That is all from Scotland today. Kies busa, pupil.